Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on ArtistFirst Radio. All past shows are available in podcast form. You can pick them up at ArtistFirst.com. Now, out to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, C-Man. And it is Michael
and Margaret
Lyons. Man, we've got this down. It's only taken us 3 years. And tonight we are going to talk about horrible people. because we all know some horrible people, don't we? Or we are horrible people, one or the other.
We are horrible to some people and wonderful to others.
You know, the old T-shirt, some are people and some are not.
Some are not.
Well, some are not. And some people are horrible, and that would be most everybody. And then there are the very few exceptions who are tolerable.
Oh, my.
And that's pretty much it. There's no room between tolerable and horrible. That's hard to say.
Tolerable and horrible?
Tolerable. Anyway, yeah, tonight we're going to talk about horrible people, and in fact we're really going to talk about people who we all know, or we've been in contact with people over the course of our lives,
or we have been,
but we all know people who, for whatever reason, seem to take, let's say, whatever the current challenge is, and rather than try to solve it, they really try to spin it up, or they try to make it into an even more difficult or an even more challenging issue. It's the person whom, when you have a problem and you're asking for suggestions, does nothing but bring up more issues, or when set to solve a problem, seems almost willfully or intentionally to make it even bigger or even more of a mess. And it's a phenomenon which you see, and oftentimes if you call them on it, they will come right back at you. Say, no, I'm not doing. I'm just trying to explore all the possibilities, and you didn't consider this and you didn't consider that, and there's other issues, and they have a great store of excuses or justifications. But at the end of the day, there's a problem that needs solving, and if you involve these people, it becomes a bigger problem. It does not get solved. It gets exacerbated. It gets turned into a mess. And how do you do? Our show is sort of a two-part, sort of figuring out, stating the issue, and then how do you deal with that? What are the ways that you can kind of both identify that this is happening? Because sometimes it's very subtle, and it's almost it's almost like this sort of hidden agenda. There are duplicitous people who say they're trying to help, but really what they're trying to do is trying to make it worse for whatever reason. And you find yourself in these situations. You say, why are you? Once you finally realize what's going on, you say, why are you doing this? And you'll get this kind of gaslighting or blowback and say, no, I'm not doing that. What are you, crazy? And you run into it, and suddenly you'll go home at the end of the day and go, George or whatever, he's just a PITA, he's just a pain in the butt. So that's our premise for tonight. Our topic, succinctly stated, is dealing with people who want to be the problem, or they want to make the problem worse, and the sort of perverse enjoyment that they get out of being a pain in their derriere, a PIAD, whatever. I don't know how to say that. PITA is a much better way of saying it, but they do exist.
Oh, well, I'd say there's a huge number of people who are caught in the story that they tell themselves in their head. And a lot of times they take the problem and they reinterpret it according to the story that they're telling to themselves in their head. So the very first thing that you have to do is make that person the main character.
You've got a real you've hit the nail on the head there exactly. Is the problem becomes more about the story.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say for this particular type of individual, they have to write themselves into the center of the problem, and in some ways identify with it, and make the seriousness of the problem become a way to make themselves more important or more significant.
But that's always the excuse. Whenever you're saying no, that's you're going off the rails. Like no, I have to understand the problem. I have to understand the problem. And the way they do it is by inserting themselves right in the middle, and then telling the story from that perspective, which I always found fascinating because, you're looking at it going, well, by inserting yourself in the center, you've discounted this whole other field on this side, and then there's a whole other grouping over here at the foundation of it. But it's your story now. So you're not counting the ones that you don't see.
Well, and the other thing that's very, very, very correct about what you're saying is in inserting themselves into the problem, they make the solution of the problem a story all about them.
Right. It's all about them. And really, they don't understand that the problem encompasses a much broader perspective.
Mm.
And you're trying to solve it in terms of far-reaching, not just placating you.
Mm. Right. Well, it becomes subjective. From something which is an objective problem, we have to get, gas for the car. It becomes a subjective story about, we always do it this way, and we must, and last time, it didn't work out, and I thought I said this, and you said that.
I've been doing this for years. I know precisely what we have to do.
Yes, there's the other good one.
Well, but it's again, they narrow the field down to what their experience had been, as opposed to saying, wait a minute, that's your own story. What about all the other people that are in the group that have different situations going on?
Well, I think the beautiful thing about what you just said is it narrows it down, as you said, to their story, their comfort zone, and it's like this is the way we always did it, so it's an appeal back to, I'm right, everyone else is wrong.
I've done the research.
I've done the research, but I'm glad you brought this problem to my attention so that I can take over, and it can be all about me.
Right. This is how we solved it.
But I think there's also this sort of dynamic where they don't really want to solve the problem. They just want to be in charge of the problem.
Well, they want to tell you what to do.
Well, exactly. It becomes, they want to manage the problem. And, you can see a lot of examples of this in governments large and small, because there's nothing better for a government, large and small, to find a problem that they can manage, because if you manage a problem, you don't have to solve it, and you get money.
Someone's giving you something, yeah.
Right, and you have a purpose in life.
Well,
so
validates their existence.
Exactly.
This is why you have to give me money, because I'm maintaining the problem.
That's why everybody
doesn't mean I'm solving it. It means I'm maintaining the problem.
That's right. We're making sure the problem exists. and that's why everybody hates Congress. No, but but to write it back small again. So I think problem solvers, and that's the other side of the coin. People who want to solve problems see the problem as a either an obstacle or something that has to be overcome to get to the goal. And the idea is that I'm here, I'm at A, I want to get to D, I have a couple other alphabet letters in between, and we've got to solve them. So they're hurdles, they're objects that you have to get past, not something where you want to dwell.
There is a difference between the two. It's as simple as that. One wants to preside with a court and everyone listening. The other one is like, well, let's just finish this. That's it. And you don't need accolades, don't need anything. Let's just get it done.
Right, because problem solvers want to get to a goal or get something actually achieved.
Completed.
Get a positive completed. Move yourself from the place where you are now to a place you want to be. And let's say these problem managers, if that's a way of looking at, see the problem as a way to place importance and focus on them. So in other words, now it goes from we want to get to the beach and we have these problems to solve to I will manage getting lunch, and we will spend a week planning it and a week figuring out what we all want and make sure that everybody gets this and we didn't get that last time so it turns into this giant production.
Yeah. Everybody is going to be heard. I'm going to check with every single person in this group to find out what your favorite food is.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I know.
And meanwhile you ruin whatever the object was, whatever pleasure we were trying to get to, and in overcoming these obstacles get to it. All the life is sucked out of it.
And they would argue to the contrary. It's like, oh no, I'm giving everyone a chance to have a voice in this.
Exactly.
Not understanding that living life is not planning it out. It's actually living it. And there are some people who actually live in the moment.
Well, let's talk about it, because the tools of the problem managers. One of them is what you just said, which is consensus. And consensus sounds lovely, and sometimes you do need it. I mean, I'm not saying that consensus is bad. If everyone agrees upon something, usually it's a good thing. But this is the sort of what you said. It's sort of a managed consensus.
When it becomes a production, and each person is going to be interviewed with 5 questions about the food. And then everything's noted and checked off. It's like, what?
Well, exactly. But I think the idea of you see this again in sort of this management by committee. You'll see it in companies. A lot of corporations fall into this trap where rather than have a clear direction and delegation and leadership, large and small, because leadership happens at all levels. You don't always have to be this grand titan, leading the world, but rather than have because the other part of this market with many of these kind of horrible management things is that there's never, if anything goes wrong, it's never anybody's fault, because we all agreed, and there's always this you know what I mean? There's never responsibility, there's never direction, there's never decision. It's all kind of this very, very fuzzy kind of, we all have to agree, and we all have. So companies fall, and people in groups fall into these traps where they want to manage so that there's no consequence for failure, and so that consensus is really a way of deflecting any sort of responsibility or abdicating any sort of leadership role. Leadership, problem solvers, you have to lead. You have to say, let's do this. And then this turns out to be wrong. And you have to eat it. You have to say, man, I said we should do this, and I was wrong. So there's this little bit of risk involved in problem solving.
Well, yeah,
but the
responsibility is yours if you're a leader.
Well, at every level, even if you're just leading your own life, you make a mistake and you have to own it. And then if you're leading a group, it becomes, more responsibility. If you are leading, a group into battle, and the battle goes badly, the captain has to go down with his ship. The commander has to take responsibility for the bad decision. One of the reasons why endeavors of that nature, when conflict has to be resolved quickly, that you don't ever run wars or conflicts by committee, is it doesn't get done.
Well, there's more casualties. There's more mistakes. There's more casualties.
Well, that may or may not be true. But I mean to say is you can't poll everybody in the battle or in your group that's going to war to see what they want to do. You've got to accept responsibility of command, or accept responsibility of solving the problem. We have to take that hill, or whatever the heck it is. If, just giving a stupid example. But if you're just managing the problem, trying to instead of take the hill, find out if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? It never works out. So it's a false syllogism to say that if you get consensus that somehow you'll always make the right decision. Most of this, especially the problem managers, are really looking to never actually make a decision. They're looking to just manage this constant flow of cycling around the problem, and then still getting 3 squares a day, but never actually getting anything done. Again, it's where you end up with these comparisons to governments, because that's what governments do. They orbit around something endlessly and never get anything done, and no one's ever at fault, and yet everyone's getting paid and getting 3 squares a day, and the frustration is everyone's sitting on the outside saying, couldn't we just have lunch?
I'm hungry.
I'm hungry. Can we have lunch and move on? No, we can't. And I think it's endlessly frustrating to those who want to solve problems, because they see the problem as something ephemeral and not to be dwelt in. And those as Nietzsche says, our quote today, I should back up and do the quote. Our quote today is from Friedrich Nietzsche, who's always good if you want something really depressing. If you want depressing and nihilist and just Nietzsche's your guy. Nietzsche's the guy to go to. So Nietzsche's quote is wonderful. I'm going to read it if you don't mind.
Yes, do read.
So Nietzsche on this type of person says, there are, I'll do it in the original German, there are horrible people. I'm not going to do the whole thing. There are horrible people who, instead of solving a problem, tangle it up and make it harder to solve for anyone who wants to deal with it. And that sentence kind of encapsulates what we were talking about.
Continue.
No, I say whoever, and his second sentence just illustrates. He says whoever does not know how to hit the nail, or in essence to solve the problem, whoever does not know how to hit the nail on the head should be asked not to hit it at all. And that's, Nietzsche's pithy. He gets it right laid right out there.
Yeah, just read the whole thing.
The nail in his statement is an achievement. You want to get the nail into the board. And these people who he's talking about, these horrible people, will endlessly stand around arguing about what's the best way to hit it, and what size hammer should we use, and endlessly on and on. It shows the difference perfectly.
The statement is, whoever does not know how to hit the nail on the head should be asked not to hit it at all. In other words, if you can't do it, you shouldn't be asked, nor should there be any suggestions from you.
I like that for two things. First of all, initially, if you have a group of people, you don't know that you may be harboring these types of horrible people. You have a problem. You have a group of people. Somebody says, I know what to do. And I think most people will say, okay, let's hear what you want to. But then as soon as it becomes apparent, there's always this dynamic, Margaret, where if it becomes apparent that somebody really just doesn't know how to hit the nail, people are nice. They're like, well, I don't want to embarrass them and tell them that they're
full of BS.
that they're just being, and they'll let them. It's almost this kind of, well, maybe I don't know. Maybe they really do know. Maybe this is the right way. And
maybe I'll pat them on the head.
Right. You let them try. This is, Nietzsche's basically saying that this is a mistake.
Yes.
You must not let them hit the nail.
No.
No. And I think people are just nice. I see this, I've seen this over the years in corporations and in meetings. Even, and there's two things. You may not know who you're dealing with, but it'll become apparent right away. A meeting of strangers, and somebody will start to, say, take ownership of a problem, and you immediately can sense that they don't know how to hit the nail, and they're just wandering around in the dark. And at that moment, you could stand up and say, you're an idiot, I know what to do. But people don't do it. They let this person kind of try. I'm not sure why. And then there's the second dynamic, which is you're in a meeting of people that everybody in the room, and the troublemakers, the ones who can't hit the nail, but yet they'll still let them try. And I always was fascinated by that dynamic, because if you stand up and say, Fred's an idiot, he doesn't know how to hit the nail, people look at you and they want to blame, they want to, no, what do you mean? Fred's just great. He can do it. Sit down. You're being a jerk. You know what I mean? You get pushback if you try to take it away from one of these folks.
I think the foundation of that is the responsibility aspect. Who is actually in charge? Because if it's a person in power that's in charge and doesn't know how to hit the nail, people will bend over backwards to accommodate.
And that's another thing that happens, is that you get people in charge who
bloviate.
Yes, but even worse in some ways is that they think they know how to hit the nail, or they've been told.
They've reinterpreted the problem into their story.
Just what we said before, yes.
Yes, so they're not taking into account all the other aspects. It's just what their part of the story is.
Yeah.
And that is the problem.
Yes. And
if they have the power to make the decision, unless you're very skilled at being able to explain non-threateningly,
yes,
in any way, shape, or form, many times these people's egos, they know they're out of their element, but they're insisting on it because this is what seemed to work before. So, if the person's ego can take it, he says, yeah, I really don't know very much about it. I'd like to open the discussion up. That's leadership. Like, look, I'm not good at everything. I got that. All right. Give me some information so I can understand.
There's two great things there. The first one is exactly what happens all the time. And you said it. The person who, rather than their ego is involved, but they don't want to say they don't know. They always want to say that they do know, or they don't want to admit that they don't know. And so they narrow it and narrow it and narrow it until it fits inside the box that they think they know. Whether they know it or not, they think they know this box. So the problem becomes, again, about them. It becomes, whatever the size of the problem is, they try to stuff it into the box they know and use the tools. Nietzsche mentions a hammer. if the only tool you have is a hammer, you think you know how to hit things. And so they stuff as much of this problem as they can, regardless of what anyone else in the room is saying or wants to say, and then they try to attack it with this hammer. You see that dynamic all the time. And that comes in when people are in charge, but their egos are really in charge of them, So that's, we mentioned, we're kind of going back and forth, but strategies on how to deal with people like this is that you do have to very skillfully and non-threateningly way let them understand that it's okay for them not to know about this. In fact, it's a good thing that you don't know about this, because this is terrible stuff that you don't need to know about. And let me show you that you're not knowing about this is actually an awesome decision on your part. You not knowing about this is probably really, that was really prescient for you not to know about this. And you walk them backwards, because the ego gets folks who
mired.
Well, folks who tangle them up because they can't admit to themselves that they don't know how to solve that problem. And so they tangle them trying to get them into something they think they know. Mm-hmm. And so that's one dynamic here is in dealing with that, you have to understand, this is the other thing. Problem solvers see the problem. They don't see the egos that are attached to it. And so to be an effective problem solver, you have to expand. You have to say, well, the person who's trying to tangle this isn't doing it because isn't doing it because they think they know how to solve the problem. Is that they don't know how, but they don't want to admit that they don't know how. So then you have to cultivate the skill of untangling their ego from the problem.
Right.
And then gently or effectively saying to them that, it's okay. It's really okay. As you kind of push gently unentangling the ego and saying, maybe this part here, you know what to do, well, then you should do that. But there's bigger pieces here, and you not knowing about them is okay. So this skill is how you deal with, or one of the ways you can deal with, actually untangling the problem. Getting the horrible out of it. And you know what? Let's untangle. Let's leave this tangle where it is, and we'll talk more about how to untangle people from their egos in the next half hour. Let's take a little break and go back to the studio.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief, Dev, is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side, as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers. The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
The Timeless Esoterica radio program with Dr. Bruce is broadcast on the fourth Monday of every month at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on ArtistFirst.com. We explore topics including the paranormal, alien life, mysteries, conspiracies, hidden history, oddities, and much more. Each show will feature a special guest with exciting and thought-provoking discussion. Always keep an open mind, an open heart, live forever, and remember Dr. Bruce believes in you.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is book 1 of the adventures of Devkalion, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
Thanks for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman. All past shows are available in podcast form. Find them at ArtistFirst.com. Now back to some people who are not horrible. Mike and Margaret Lyons.
But how do you know? Thank you, Scott. Yes, and tonight's topic is horrible people. But you know, there are actually a lot of ways to be horrible, and this is just one of those ways. But in fact, you know, what we've been talking about is that there are really let's say two kinds of people in the world. Maybe there's three in truth, but there are two kinds of people in the world. There are folks who want to solve problems, you know, and generally those folks have a set of skills, and you mentioned it last half hour, Margaret, is that their egos aren't necessarily tied up in knowing everything. You know what you know, and you know what you don't know, and you're not afraid to say I don't know. This is one type of person. Generally, these people are they have a certain competence level, but they know that they're not the absolutely best at everything, and they're okay with that. And then you have people for whom a problem becomes more of an ego challenge. In other words, two things. They want to make all problems about themselves. They want to stuff whatever the problem is into what they're comfortable with. And if a problem looks like if a challenge comes up that looks like they don't know, they can't admit that they don't know. And we mentioned it last half hour that oftentimes you'll find people who have these issues want to run everything or solve everything by committee. They want consensus because this is a deflective technique. If you feel incompetent to solve something, or you feel that you don't know and you don't want to admit it, what better way to do that than to get everybody to buy in? Because then if it goes wrong, oh, well, everybody, you know, we all made the decision together. Those who, on the other side, the problem solvers, are also willing to risk being wrong, because this is how you learn. Your ego's not terribly involved. They're willing to take a decision and live with the consequences. They're willing to, even in taking that decision, you can certainly involve many other people, but if the effort goes wrong, they're willing to take responsibility. You see this in endeavors which require leadership. The military is always a great example because there is a leader of the platoon. The leader says go X, Y, or Z. If it goes badly, they go down with that decision. If it goes well, you'll find most good leaders, if things go well, will say, the team did it. The team did a great job. I was just, I was facilitating, I was making a decision, but it was a team effort. So in well-run sports teams, there's a manager, but that manager will always say the team won the game.
Well, and if they really are team players, everyone understands their part. And you can't be a whole team without having all the parts working perfectly.
Right, or at least this is digressing a little bit, but an effective leader knows that even if they don't know something, they can bring in that expertise to the team and still get the problem solved, which is the actual ultimate goal. Make the decisions, but understand what you need. It's like Mission Impossible. You need Barney for this one. You always need Barney. You notice that? Barney was always there. Barney never was not there because we always need. But there were other people. There was the big guy and the other guy. Anyway, but you needed a team to accomplish that mission, and it was not acceptable. Two things weren't acceptable. It wasn't acceptable to just orbit around the problem and never solve it. That was useless. And it was also not acceptable to not own the consequences of your actions. Back to Mission Impossible, the secretary will just vow. Well, that means you're on your own. So good leaders, problem solvers, understand that. But we were also talking though about how to deal, and maybe that's what we should spend this half hour on, or more of this half hour on. Because oftentimes you won't be the leader. You'll be perhaps a competent person in the room, but the person who is ostensibly in charge may not be an effective problem solver. And they may be one of these people who tangles things. And so a skill that you can develop to get to the ultimate goal, which is we solve this problem and move on to the next one, is that you understand, you sense we all know when somebody's tangling a problem, but we don't necessarily know what to do about it. And one of the things you can do, and we mentioned that last half hour, is that you have to see where the ego is getting tangled, and you have to skillfully, non-threateningly untangle that ego. One thing that people do is they take a problem and they magnify it and magnify it and magnify. Oh, it's unsolvable. It's the problem of the ages. We'll never get out of this, because that means that if it goes bad, well, nobody could have ever solved this thing. It's so horrible. And you have to skillfully say, well, no, let's break it up. We have a problem here, but let's solve just a little piece at a time. And then, you're really good at the XYZ part of this, so you get to hold the handle. Very important to hold the handle. And then, we'll let John do this and Sarah do that and so on. So you diffuse it. You diffuse the ego portion of it and let whatever fits in the box fit inside the box of the person who's having the ego issue. So they feel better. They feel empowered and in control because they've got a good handle on the handle. But they don't necessarily have to solve the whole problem, and they can feel like they're still contributing and in charge.
Well, usually you give them, you be the face of this.
Oh, that's another good one. Oh, you know how to do this.
Yeah, I do. I do.
Yes. Yeah. Well, explain that. What do you mean by the face of it?
Well, just that this is the project, and you are our point man, and you will be the face of this project.
We'll make you look good. We'll make you look like a hero.
Right, and we will work together to bring this forward, but whenever they think of the project and the fact that the people involved are solving the problem, competency gets reflected directly onto you because you are the face.
And if you do it skillfully enough, or if people are honest enough, they'll say, well, it was a team effort. But sometimes it will just be in getting the problem solved and untangling the people who are trying to keep it unsolved. You may have to be a little egoless yourself. You may have to say, well, yeah, I did all the work and they got all the credit, but it still can be okay, at least for a period of time. I think that can frustrate people over time. If
Well, if the person that's the face is claiming complete credit, then it's a problem.
And that happens.
Yes, yes, but that's the point. If it is defined that you are the face, but your job is to keep the communication lines open with, this company, that company, and we're going to update you in a manner that you can update them. So that's their task as the face, is to keep those lines open and going. And when that happens, the person designated as the face, begins to understand the complexities of what it means to bring this whole thing together. In a lot of ways, it allows or educates at the same time.
That would be that's the most positive outcome, and if you can do that, it's as they say, I hate this expression, but it is a win-win. Everyone wins there. Many times it doesn't go quite as well as that, and we've all been in situations where we did a lot of work and someone else took the credit. And the key there is, if you are truly egoless, you can deal with that. You can say, well, I don't care. The problem got solved. Most people aren't that egoless. They would like to get some credit for the work done. And so this is where we'll end up with toxicities within the team.
Yeah. No.
And resentments,
Yeah. Resentments. Or someone comes with a background that, well, I've dealt with these problems before, but nobody's listening to them because they're too pedantic. They're absolutely insisting that their story is the only story that's valid. And they're not open to what the rest of the team is talking about. That's very difficult because, especially if this person is trying to push forward his particular viewpoint.
Right.
People skills.
Yeah, and maybe a lot of this does come down. I mean, whenever so if you're one person and you have one problem, number one, there's no one else but you. So if you don't solve the problem, if you just orbit around it, there's nobody to deflect the blame. The problem will not get solved, and you're the only one around.
Some people like that, though.
Well, yeah.
They're defined by their problem. How many people do we know that are defined by their problem?
This is an excellent point. There are these personality disorders. They're not horrible people, except they're being horrible to themselves.
Right.
Where the problem becomes the identity.
Mm-hmm.
And so you sit there on the problem, never solving it, because you feel if you solve it, you somehow lose your identity.
Yeah, and that's probably more scary than having the problem.
Right, and these aren't toxicities; they're psychoses. This becomes a psychosis. But psychotic people in groups are just as bad. Well, I mean, when you have, it is funny. But one psychotic person in a group, especially if they have some responsibility, can become the tangler, can become something that really. So an individual psychosis is a sad thing. You see somebody who's just wrapped up in the problem and they don't know what to do about it, and they need help. They need outside help. But when you have these group dynamics, it magnifies. The skill, the people skills, all this horrible person thing is always in groups. It's always that somebody has, through their individual personality disorder or their individual personality, is tangling up the flow. In many ways, it's like a blockage in your chi. If you look at the body as the energy flows, and the free flow of energy through the body gives you a healthy organism, which is like a team. Your body is like a team. It's like a lot of different parts that have to work together in harmony. Once one portion gets bollocksed or tangled, you have a disorder, you have a disease, a dis-ease. Groups of people in analog are like a body. They have to work in some sort of harmony to be an effective group.
Right.
A team is not a bunch of individuals running in every direction. No, it has some purpose, and it has a goal. We want to do this. We want to take that hill or whatever it is. To the extent that you bollocks up one portion of the team, it affects everybody. And the closer to the heart of the purpose it is, the more deleterious effect it will have on the team. And we've all seen, I've seen many times, where teams, toxicity of one person in a team completely destroys the team, because it flows outward into resentment, and it flows outward into toxic behavior and backbiting and infighting. A smooth running team looks very easy from the outside, but it's an incredibly precious thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a machine. If you just kink up one part, it can start to fly apart. So being a leader of an effective team is, how many thousands of books have been written about being an effective leader. It's so important. But then making sure that as a leader, you make sure that the team is always appreciated, is always untangled and free-flowing.
Right.
And you have to identify those blockages right away. You have to be the Reiki master of your team. You have to see when something is not flowing right, and you have to, through your insight, understand, this is George's problem that he doesn't understand, or she doesn't understand this particular thing, and we have to untangle it. We have to make sure that either train or reorganize or change things. That's what a good leader can do to keep their team running. And I think the worst problem is when the leader is bad and you don't have the power. Then you have to be very skilled. You have to work from within. you have to untangle things with the unseen hand.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's basically being so present that all the nonsense melts away.
Mm. And to go back to our original premise, there are, maybe it's a smaller set of people, but there are people whose purpose is to tangle the team. They through their predisposition or through true nefarious intent, want to be problem causers. They do
bollocks things up.
They bollocks things up. They're really agents of chaos. It's the person whose purpose is to slow things down, or to make sure that things don't get done, or to give information which is just not enough, or just holding. You see this with fiefdoms. That's I do that. That's my information. I don't want to share it with you because and then I would be less important. And you can see this in a lot of times in organizations or governments that they don't reward problem solving. They reward problem management. There's no reward. You know the old expression, "Don't kill the job."
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Where this was a while back, but when you've got programmers who are able to program in the old language, and you got a machine that only works in the old language, and don't want to become obsolete. The programmers don't want to become obsolete, and they don't really want to learn new languages, but they maintain the old dinosaur. And they're saying, well, you can't get rid of me because I'm the one that's maintaining this piece of machinery for you.
Right.
Mhm.
There's the term job security, but there is. It really is. It becomes a the maintenance of the job. If you look at true economies, in a sense where you're rewarded for performance, so you get things done because you've got another thing to do, and if you get this done and you get your cookie, you've got to go earn another cookie. But when you take that away, it becomes an exercise in managing the problem, never killing the job. We're going to be fixing this stretch of I-95 for the next 27 years because we're not going to kill the job. We're still getting paid every day, whether the job gets done or not. So if you kill the job, then there's
You've cut off an income source.
You've cut off your source. So in this sense, what is a good anathema to these kind of tanglers is when you don't reward tangling. When if you tangle something, then you will lose your position. And markets and economies tend to do that because markets and economies are like bodies. If your knee hurts, it hurts, and you want to fix it. You want to unbollocks it. You want it to work right again. So there's no reward for keeping it tangled.
Right.
But if you take that away, if you take the pain of the hurt away, so you numb it up with with Percocet or something, then you may live with it forever because the Percocet's great. That feels good. So you have to reward and punishment or the pain of not solving a problem is an important component of untangling things. The feedback loop of this hurts, so let's not do that, has to be present. When you have, and this is again the consequences, when you have decisions by committee where no one is ever responsible and pain is never felt, then you end up with endless management of the problem and never solving it because there's no pain. We just get paid and we can endlessly manage the problem.
Well, the pain and blame, I think. You've got to have enough in you not to blame somebody else and take the pain.
I think the other way of thinking about blame is that if you're blamed, then you have to take responsibility. The deflection of blame is wrong, but accepting the blame, saying, yeah, it was my decision, I screwed up.
But that's what I'm talking about.
Yes, exactly. I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying that if you remove all responsibility, you end up with these toxic tangles. Once you add the kind of the blade of responsibility, you made the wrong decision. You take the consequences. Then the next time people generally learn, they say, "Oh yeah, I did that last time and that didn't work out really well. Let me try something else. Let me ask, let me build, let me do a different team. Let me do something more effective."
Mhm. Well, it's a learning curve, or it becomes a learning curve. And man always seems to learn by pain.
Oh man, that reminds me of your friend who, she had that ongoing argument with you about whether you needed pain in order to learn.
Right. I always said, you need to feel the pain. And she said, no. It would be better if people could just learn things. And I think that if that's possible, they may learn slowly, but, you can continue that way. And I just said, well, in my experience, no one really learns something unless they hurt.
Yeah.
Real pain, not just discomfort.
Right. And that's exactly it. Pain is like responsibility. And if there's no pain, then you can stay in college and endlessly take courses forever and be oblivious, be just orbiting around the problem, never having to actually do anything. But if there's pain, which is you go and get an education so that you can earn a living, and if you go and get the education and don't earn a living, you fail. You don't eat. It's wonderful. The philosophies do work out exactly like that. If you take away the pain, no work, no eat. If you say you can never work and you'll still eat, well, then people will just happily eat and not work, and you end up with something which collapses fairly rapidly. If you put in the pain, which is like, if you work hard, you get X, and if you work harder, you get X plus, and if you want to eat, you got to do at least this much. Then you have a healthy flow. This is where
it becomes a cause and effect, and what it teaches a person is that your actions have worth. And most people, if you're just getting stuff in without having to do anything, you basically don't value anything.
Right.
You don't know what it means to not have. You don't know what it means to be hungry. And being hungry is a big teacher, a very big teacher.
And it is, and the people who tangle things don't, that's why they gaslight. That's why they tell you, oh, what do you mean? Because they really don't see. They haven't felt the pain of the tangle.
Well, the truth, I think part of the truth of that is that they don't want to feel the pain. Okay? And my definition of pain is that you feel pain when you've reached your limit. So when you're about to break through, it usually hurts.
Well, I'll tell you what, on that note, I feel the pain of the end of the show. So let's break through and come back for the next show. And I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret. And thank you for listening.